Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unleashing the Power of Branded Merch. My name is Bobby Lee Hugh. I'm the Chief Content Officer at commonsku. For those that have not met me before or don't know me, I was a distributor for years. So I was specialized in company stores, and I ran a company as the CEO for about 20 years. And our specialty was e-commerce merch. And so when we get to that area, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. But I want to give you my background as I come to this part of the presentation, both as a practitioner, someone who's very passionate about it. And of course, we at commonsku are huge about supporting our community and the merch business that we are in. So welcome to Unleashing the Power of Branded Merch. Our webinar today is brought to you by us at commonsku. We want you to know that we've got your back. We are the ordering platform that just makes your life a whole lot easier, a whole lot simpler. You can learn more at commonsku.com/demo, but we were able to bring this to you for free today. And we have powered over 750 distributors just like you with over 1.5 billion in revenue. And we welcome you to join us and check it out. So we want to make your life easier. We're going to touch on a little bit toward the end about how the world of the business has changed and how the platform and things like that can really help you and your clients as we move along. But first, before we get into the points that I wanted to dig down into, I wanted to just show this brief story that we'll return to in a later part of our presentation. And that is, throughout this presentation, you're going to see brands that are really high profile brands that make sense when they catch on or catch fire. But then there are brands like Aldi's, which is a discount grocery store. Now, a discount grocery store doesn't normally excite you about wearing their merch, but notice the headlines here. Aldi's new drip, their new campaign is sexy as hell. Aldi shoppers are scrambling to buy the hottest new items before they sell out. So popular, customers are having trouble finding some items. You'll notice that the merchandise is gorgeous. They did a great job with the branding. We talked about this merch lesson about how Aldi's can sell a tracksuit for $10. I'll give you the answer later on in the presentation there. But on down the road here, I mentioned earlier that this presentation is brought to you by us at commonsku, and you can learn more at commonsku.com/demo. But also, everything in this presentation today that we're talking about, all of the 8 paradigms, all of the things that are happening in the merch world, we've unearthed and discovered through our research in our newsletter called The Backpack. The Backpack is released every first and third Friday of each month, and you can check this out at community.commonsku.com. That's where you can subscribe to the newsletter. But there have been over 640 different links that we've shared since last fall. And the newsletter has been immensely popular. I bring this up not because of us, but because of you. Many of you, over 20,000, nearly 20,000 emails have been sent. And our open rate and our response rate to the newsletter has been phenomenal, twice as big at least as the most excellent rates out there with the newsletter. So I bring this up because everything we're going to talk about today, we first discovered through the Backpack. And here's how I want you to use today's presentation. Number one, if you're new to the business, I hope this is a really great overview for you. I hope this gives you some inspiration about what's happening in the market and then also kind of what's happening in the industry. Now, B, if you're a seasoned pro, I hope you can sit back, relax, enjoy a cup of coffee, watch this and gain some fresh inspiration for the campaigns you're doing on behalf of your customers. And C, as you see the examples I share in today's presentation, steal those from us and use those in your client presentations as great examples of what's happening in the merch market today. All right. So the one thing I want to mention, especially for the pros that are listening and tuned in, maybe you've been in the business for a decade, maybe you've been in the business for a couple of years, but you got your hand on it. You've figured some things out and you're doing incredibly well. One of the things we have to be careful of in any expertise, and that is when we gain an expertise in something, particularly something as complex as merchandise business with its supply chain, its trends, product, manufacturing, there's so much for you to know that your expertise ends up dulling your experience so that you miss out on what's happening in the market with the merchandise. And I give you an example. For 20 years or so, I ran a distributorship, and we had a small warehouse where we distributed merch through our e-commerce stores for clients. And I remember losing the love about how much fun this business was and how incredible the business is. So I hope by the time we're done with this presentation, I can reignite some of you pros in the audience to see what's changed in the market and how you can spark incredible experiences with merch that you create. Because one of the things that I know about you and your business is that you are too busy to see. because this is what it feels like almost every day as you race to meet a deadline-driven business. So let's look first about how the world once viewed swag. All right, once the world viewed swag through a lens that was predominantly negative. They called it cheap plastic giveaways, tchotchkes, freebies. And there was an article some of you might remember in Fast Company magazine called "It's Time to Stop Spending Billions on Cheap Conference Swag." We invited the author of that article to join us, Elizabeth Segrin, for a podcast, but also ask her to join us for an event. So we unpacked some of these things. But if you'll notice the headlines that have been happening, particularly over the past 3 or 4 years, they have radically changed, because here is now how the world views merch. You're seeing articles like this. If you noticed branded merch everywhere, you are not alone. Here's why. From Adweek, why every brand is making merchandise right now. This was just published in Forbes. Panera, Chipotle, and Taco Bell are selling out of merch. Should retailers worry? So how did swag suddenly become one of the hottest markets that you can get into, or at least the hottest markets that a brand can use as a part of their creative brand expression? We're going to unpack that today. In fact, now the terms have become there are new terms cropping up all the time. This is new for me, and that is affirmation forward merch or trial merch. So the terms have become an interesting, fun way for the market to express themselves in different ways. We wrote this article called "Nobody Calls It Swag Anymore," and that's a good thing. Now, if your business is called swag, don't worry, don't sweat it. When clients reach out to you, what they're using is an easy language handle to open the door to a conversation. So they can call it what they want as long as they don't demean it. But what I mean by swag versus merch is kind of what's happening in the search engine and how the market is responding to what they call what we sell. In fact, through Google Trends analysis, we discovered that the term promotional products has been on the decline since 2004. It's been on a rapid decline and continuing decline. The term swag also has seen a decline through the years. But the term merch, and I know many of you, particularly if you're Gen Z or so, this is nothing new to you, but if you've been in the business a while, this has been a big shift in the nomenclature about what we call it. Why is this even important? Well, it's important because the old swag had this residue around the name. It was stuff we all get. By that same moniker, it really didn't express anything special. But the new merch sort of has this special aura to it. It's the gear we covet, the things that we yearn to possess or have. The word merch has become synonymous with products that people will pay a premium for. Create skyrocket demand, scarcity, radical brand love, all kinds of good things happening with that. So this simple nomenclature or name change, it really has incredible potential for us, for our SEO, our brand identity, our conversations with customers, for the respect our medium carries, for attracting top creative and sales talent to our organizations. People love to be in the merch business because it's a cool business to be in. For how team members connect with the medium they already embrace. If you're hiring Gen Z or younger as they start to enter the workforce, they already connect with this medium. You don't have to explain it. They already know it. In fact, in making sure that we use terms that they are using is very, very important. Plus, and I think this is one of the most important things, is how you and I see the market as infinite versus finite. Because if we just look at swag or promotional products as giveaways, we're looking at a very tiny microscopic part of a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I'll get into the numbers here in a little bit. But first, let's get into some really fun stuff. I want you to know that branded merch is just no longer simply advertising. That is one of the most important lessons for you here today. It's no longer simply advertising. And here are the 8 paradigms that are changing the way that brands use merch and how you should use merch with your clients. Number 1, branded merch creates this cult-like fervor in followers, forging this real communal identity. One of my favorite stories of all time when it comes to merch is the New Yorker tote bag. Now, if you're not a nerd like me and a book nerd like me and you love the New Yorker, that's okay, but you can at least get this story. The New Yorker started years ago saying, in a meeting, they were like, we should probably give away something like a tote bag. A tote bag is something readers carry. They use it to carry all their books. Why don't we give away a tote bag with every subscription? So they did this. And it was actually a very kind of unimpressive moment. Well, Dwayne Shepard, the VP of Consumer Marketing, Condé Nast, who publishes the New Yorker, said this in an article, and this has been several years ago, but he said, I've been at Condé Nast for almost 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this New Yorker tote bag. The New Yorker tote bag from 2014 to 2018, they've given over 500,000 bags away through subscriptions. Now, that's at least. Now, you could at least double that because subscriptions, David Remnick was on an episode with the New York Times editor where they talked about their prolific skyrocketing subscription rates. So they're probably north of 1 million of these bags that they've given out. This is the one you're looking at right now. I really love. It's the brand new remixed logo New Yorker tote bag. One of my favorite comments about this was in the article from Vice magazine, where Sam Wolfson, the writer, said, famous tote bag company, the New Yorker, has become so successful they now produce a weekly magazine filled with investigative journalism, restaurant reviews, and satirical essays. This bag remains its flagship and most popular product, which is somewhat surprising because it's not that good, is it? It's just the logo within the logo. Just pause for effect because it's so good. And that's why you see this article in Market Watch, how a free canvas tote bag became a bigger status symbol than a Hermes bag. It's an astonishing look at what can happen when a brand picks a merchandise product that fits really well with their audience, their brand. This is also happening in other parts of the book world. The New York Times had an article where Sally Rooney's book releases were accompanied by merch, really cool merch campaigns and PR campaigns, and they became the talk of the literary internet. In fact, just this past week, maybe been 2 weeks ago, this article was published in Esquire magazine called The Merchification of Book Publishing, a 4,000 word article. And I pulled a few quotes from this for you. What quote, when I stopped by a bookstore, sometimes I'd get a comment from a bookseller about the merch frenzy. The more digital we are, the little things that are tangible and unique have a lot of currency. Book merch has more social currency than ever before. The more digital we are, I mentioned that one. Promotional items act as the ultimate seal of approval. I just love this. So what a cool story for you to share with your clients. What a cool experience for you to recreate the brands that you work with. I want to pause and note that you'll notice I'm not going to make a distinction between B2C and B2B. There really is no distinction anymore. Forrester magazine had a great research report where they talked about the rise of the business consumer. Your buyers are bringing in their predilections, their preferences, their taste for merch, and they don't see a distinction. They want the brands that they work for to have meaning. They want the brands that they work for to have the cool same merch experiences that they have when they buy merch from their favorite brands. So your buyers today are not making that distinction. They see what's going on in the market. They see what's going on in style trends, and they bring that to you. Or if you're one of the super pros in this business, like the many distributors in our market, then you're bringing those ideas to them first because you're studying it, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Number two, merch is the new press release and the instigator and the provocateur. It was an interesting article in Glamour magazine just here recently at the Paris Fashion Week. The Panera Bread restaurant chain actually released a bag for Paris Fashion Week. Now you might think, oh, really? Is that tacky? Is that cool? Well, they sold out like crazy. In fact, everyone was obsessed about this baguette bag. Notice the Glamour article says the fast casual food chain accidentally created an it bag. Panera Bread did not accidentally create anything. Panera Bread knows exactly what they're doing. In fact, their press release, when they launched this bag, they said they launched the ultimate accessory ahead of fashion's biggest week, introducing the baguette. So Panera Bread is actually not new to this. They've done this before back in 2021. They dropped a soup-themed swimwear collection. And they did this in the middle of summer because they knew soup sales would be soft. And so they decided to create a merch collection. Note that they decided to create a merch collection instead of just writing a press release and saying, hey, we did this thing, or we want to push soup sales. They created a swimwear collection to create buzz, to generate some excitement and energy. Well, of course, it sold out. And then they just did it again. Panera's new swimwear just launched, mix and match, just like you can order your lunch order. So brands that you are seeing take merch to another level we've never seen before, where they're treating them like press releases and they're seeing that they can launch these campaigns and get attraction and media in the press. All right. Number three, merch is an emotional connection and conversation point. This is one of my favorites because it's such a a warm-hearted story. But you might know about the DIY guy that showed up at the NASCAR race and said, I don't have any merch, so I'm just going to make my own. So he penciled in his own NASCAR name on his t-shirt. Well, of course, NASCAR found him. The savvy social people at NASCAR found him and gave him an official NASCAR t-shirt. And I forget the number of likes. What you're seeing, the likes there is on his original t-shirt, but the number of likes through this campaign were absolutely insane. And you should go check it out on Instagram when you get a chance, because it's a really heartwarming video. It's really cool to see. But again, here's where a brand recognizes what merch can do, and they captured and seized a moment around it. Another thing that I love to point out too, a lot of folks say Apple doesn't do a lot of merch. Apple does a lot of merch. It's just they do it very tastefully and they do it very specifically. This was a scholarship that was set up for students, and you could apply to go to WWDC, Apple's main event. Well, there's a young technologist that won, and he said this on Twitter that he got accepted into this because they were only accepting a certain number of students across the US. And of course, Apple sent him a congratulatory kit full of the coveted Apple merch that you always want, and it had 47,000 likes. I love this story too, because it shows you what can happen around an emotional connection with merch. All right, number 4, branded merch is the new affordable luxury and has actually entered the world of high fashion. This is from Vogue magazine. Welcome to the era of cult hotel merchandise. You're seeing folks like the fast food chain White Castle hire high-end fashion designers like Telfar Clemens to come in and design their staff uniforms. And so it's becoming this amazing phenomenon where you're seeing this mix between streetwear and branded merch and high fashion. And it's one of the most exciting times to be in the industry because of what's happening in the world today. Taco Bell released a collab with State Bicycle Company. And if you look at this and you do not know that that is Taco Bell for a second. And then you realize that's some pretty stylish gear for all those gearheads that are out there into this sort of thing. But it's awesome. I love it. And by the way, you know you've reached sort of a peak couture when it comes to branded merch, when you can release a sweatshirt through the Fortnite Balenciaga co-branding collab, and the sweatshirt runs $725. Now, maybe you're on the cheaper side and you don't want to spend that kind of money on a sweatshirt. Maybe you can fork out the $475 for the t-shirt. We won't call you cheap. No one will call you cheap. Don't worry about it. But what an interesting time to be in, where brands are seizing this opportunity to create this one of a kind experience through their own unique brands. This is a gift shop that we talked about in the Backpack newsletter, where it's a new store that features the finest merch from some of the finest brands. And when you drill down into one of these logos, so you drill down into the Dark Arts Coffee brand, you'll see merch that you can actually go buy. So this isn't you just walking in Dark Arts Coffee Shop getting a mug because you're a fan of the brand. This is you buying merch on this website, and then you can see the story about each brand as you drill down into it. It's a really cool store. This just popped up a few weeks ago, and we absolutely love it. All right, number 5. As we see what brands are doing with merch today, I want to remind you that the world's most iconic brands started with a merch strategy. And there's a reason they've become so iconic, because they started their business with a merch strategy. If you've read the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, you'll notice in the book, he talks about their first experience selling Nike shoes because they were trying to get into the Olympic athlete market. And he mentioned that his wife especially loved working on the t-shirt projects, but they would always hand out t-shirts along with trying to get their shoes on the feet of Nike athletes. And the t-shirts were one and the same. They tried to use these as a merch experience. And of course, now we know what's happened with Nike, and you can get this 1970s vintage Nike Olympic trial t-shirt for $10,000 if you want. I bring this up because some of the coolest brands in the world started their brands knowing that merch was going to be very, very important. They knew it was a one-to-one medium. They knew it was an emotional connection. Another example is Yeti. You might not know this, but in the first few years, with every cooler they shipped, Ryan and Roy, the founders, threw in a Yeti hat and a t-shirt. Why? To create a conversation around the product. Just another excellent example. I mean, look at the value that you're getting out of these merch experiences. When your clients talk with you about cost, you talk about value, because that's what we're talking about here. It's funny, we always get into this conversation with customers about the cost of an item, but we rarely get into conversations with the customer about the value of an item, what that can reach and do for for your brand, because we have to remember that every single brand wants to be a lifestyle brand for their community, for their fans, for their employees. They don't want to reach the entire world necessarily. They just want to reach their world and become that cult favorite brand. A great example is this. We have a podcast. If you're new to commonsku, we have a podcast called the SKUcast. Year to date, we've had about 50,000 listens. It's been a very popular podcast in the industry. I've been honored to host so many wonderful people in this business, from folks that are running small businesses to large businesses, from big names. It's just been a wild ride. But the one thing that we do is we talk about cool experiences going on with merch. And we interviewed a guy named Gavin Matthew. I encourage you to go check it out. He's with Supervision Studios, but he created a hardware collection, a collection of merch for Microsoft called, I just love the name, Hardware. The fact that somebody came up with an apparel collection called Hardware is really cool. You can check out this episode. Sorry
My
about
style is
that.
known for, and it's just because I wake up and I'm like, man, let's throw a hoodie on and get to work. I'm style over fashion.
Accidentally clicked something there. All right, we keep moving here. So I want you to check out, I can send you this video in the notes if we want, or along with the presentation when we follow this, but it's a really good episode with Matthew. And he talked about never not creating. This guy is always a creative genius. And I encourage you to check this episode out. I bring this up again because we need to remember that the merchandise experiences that we create for clients has become a profession. It's not just a job. It's really become a profession with special disciplines. And Gavin goes into all of these different experiences around creating the special designs, as well as crafting the right merch experiences. All right, number 6, merch is now leading trends, creating trends versus simply just following trends. We've talked about this before, but the Zizmacore New York scene, where local brands are seeing this resurgence in merch because people just love to express their individuality through the brands that they love. Now, we all know by now about the lines that are happening around the Taylor Swift concerts and the sweatshirts. What would you do for a Taylor Swift sweatshirt? But remember, every brand is a band, or it should at least aspire to be a band. It's that kind of energy that if you approach your customers with their merch experiences from the aspect of we are trying to create cult-like following with this brand or band, then you're going to end up creating better merch experiences. That's what the Gavin conversation is all about. It's all about approaching it with the right attitude, right? Number 7, merch is a one-to-one medium meant to drive social impact. One of my favorite examples, one of my favorite brands to follow is, of all things, UPS. Now, depending on your day, maybe you had an order go south with UPS and you're not really happy with them right now, or maybe you love them. I loved UPS. I love the fact that I love them as a brand. I love the work that they did. They had like a less than a 0.5% error rate with us whenever we were shipping with UPS. So I absolutely love them. We would ship 500,000 packages, and with 0.5% error rate was incredible. Now, on any given day, that could have been an order that drove us crazy if it got lost, but UPS we loved. What they are doing with their brand, especially in terms of the market, in terms of recognizing and their social impact, and recognizing the work that they're doing through designers, through their social initiatives. They're doing amazing work. This is an example called Be Unstoppable Gear. This is a shop that we talked about on our podcast, where they in collaboration with some artists, they built this merch collection to be launched at New York Fashion Week. And they did this in collaboration with up and coming Black designers. 100% of the proceeds went to support those designers. So this is a wonderful way to use merchandise in a way that many of us don't even think about. We think about it in terms of giveaways. We think about it in terms of the brand value, but what it does for the community can be incredible. And the fact that you're attaching that brand with that experience is creating that emotional connection. Probably one of my favorite examples in the business is this video that some of you might have seen with our friends at Sanmar. And it's called, This Is Not a T-Shirt. I'm just going to let it play so you can get this full experience. But this is exactly what I'm talking about when we look past the product into what the impact of the product provides on behalf of the brand. I love that. What a great example. The other brands, and there we could go on and on. What's happened in the industry, if you're fairly new, is that has been this real transformation about brands making incredibly positive impact with the merchandise experiences they create. We interviewed Davis Smith, the founder and CEO of Cotopaxi, who talked about an ethical supply chain, and he talked about supply chain philanthropy and what we can do as merch professionals to be aware of where our goods are manufactured, how they're manufactured, and the impact that branded merchandise can have throughout the supply chain in a positive way. I encourage you to go check that episode out. You can check it out at community.commonsku.com. But it's a wonderful episode where Davis gets into the impact that you can make through a merchandise experience. We also have highlighted a couple of other social impact topics where we've interviewed Seth Godin on climate change. And Seth gets into talking about how you can make an impact on the planet through design, and the way that you can actually shape better merchandise experiences all the way starting at the design phase, not just at the material and what material you choose, but at the design phase. So it's a place where you can make an impact. I encourage you to check out that episode. We also interviewed the former CMO at Adidas, or Adidas, if you're in this part of the country where I'm at, but Adidas, Eric Ledke with Unless Collective, who is creating this plant-based streetwear concept. Now, they're not in the merch business yet, but we keep an eye out for those brands that are creating this incredible merch experience, that being very kind to the planet. All right. One more thing I want to point out is UPS. UPS not only did the New York Fashion Week like 4 years ago, is when they first launched their Be Unstoppable shop. Well, they did it again, but this time is a very short video that talks about the new experience they created, talking about making a one-to-one community impact.
The heartbeat of Awake is New York City. Being born and raised here, I'm always trying to focus on hyperlocal, and that was the reason why I wanted to work with the High School of Fashion Industries. When the opportunity for the collaboration with UPS came to the table, the vision was how to be unstoppable, and that evolved into Echa Palante. We came together to create a scholarship fund. We all start as a small business, and my hope and my wish as young Latinx creatives that participate in this scholarship program will become the future of the fashion industry.
The one thing you notice that he never used the word merch. They just used the visuals to express how powerful that was in the concept that they created. I love what they're doing through their merchandise experiences to give back to the community. It's an incredible way. And I hope with you, as you work with your clients and you see that you're using merch experiences for maybe onboarding new employees, or maybe you're using merch experience to help elevate a certain sales category in their business, or employee retention or client retention. I hope you also see the social impact you can make as you use merch for good that way. All right, number 8, and finally, we're going to talk about merch and the booming boutique e-commerce story, because what's happening with e-com has been phenomenal through the past, especially the past 3 or 4 years. The industry, according to PPAI, the industry's biggest trade association, is around 26 billion. But you'll notice even PPAI published an article that said the corporate gifting market may be much larger than previously known. Just corporate gifting alone, according to CoreSite Research, is expected to be 306 billion by 2024. Now, licensed sports merchandise is estimated to be around 5 billion, and global TV and movie merchandise is 79 billion. So you can see, when I mentioned earlier, the lens through which we see the merch opportunity can be either finite or infinite. That we're talking about infinite market. The 22 billion that's reported through our amazing industry associations and organizations that report are reported numbers by people who participate in those surveys, but it's not taking together the collective number of merch that's being sold, branded merch that's being sold. I mean, we're talking probably in the $500 billion category in total. Now, here's what's interesting that's happening in the market that's fairly new. Dale Denham, the CEO of PPAI, was our guest a few weeks ago on the SKUcast, and we talked about their new list, about the PPAI 100, top 100 companies. They're doing some incredible work in the industry. And I asked Dale if there was anything in the business that's trending, because he's really good at macro trends. Is there anything trending that's really caught your attention? And he said, yes. And he cited our pop-up shops specifically, but he said this whole pop-up shop phenomenon, something I want to point out to you here, is that the industry revenue around 26 billion in 2022, PPAI noted that 20% of that $22 billion market was e-com merch sales. Now, the interesting part about that is that when people report their numbers, they're reporting e-commerce in general. So that means that 4imprint, who's a $4 billion company, reported their e-commerce sales. Regardless of whether 4 billion went through a shopping cart or was handled through a custom order, or the reverse, think of all of those distributors out there. They're in this reported 26 billion that said that they are doing merchandise experiences through shops. Now, take that 20% number and consider that you extract maybe the 4imprint style $4 billion companies that are, or swag.com, they're selling straight through a shopping cart. They're not creating boutique brand experiences through shops. They're selling merchandise through a shopping cart to everybody, the Amazon type effect, but with branded merchandise. You take the 4 billion 4imprints and the 50 million swag.coms and folks that are like them, and you still have a very, very small percentage of the market. The vast majority of e-commerce that's happening right now is happening through e-commerce, boutique branded e-commerce shops. And the reason is this: your oldest buyers are millennials. A third of your customers are Gen Zs. And that's what the reality is now. And if it's not now, then in 24 months, it will be. By 2025, over 75% of the workforce will be digital natives. In the late 2020s, Gen Alpha, I didn't know there was a name, Gen Alpha enters the workforce. So the trend for this, we wrote about this, was to solve for the digital first promo buyer. That's kind of what's happening with boutique shops. It's an amazing way for you to create an easy pop-up shop experience for your customers. We have these available at commonsku.com/shops. I'm going to get off this and jump on a few examples, but I wanted to note that that is the fastest and hottest trend happening right now in the merchandise business. So I hope you are creating those experiences for your clients. You're seeing this everywhere now, no matter what the brand is, whether it's Netflix or Whataburger, whoever's running the Whataburger store, who a distributor is selling to the Whataburger store, congrats to you, because it's an amazing little shop experience, as well as folks like Chipotle. They're doing an amazing job with branded merch. And you might have seen about 2 months ago, this incredible shop released by Chick-fil-A. They're really nailing the aesthetic and the design and the merchandise experiences, and captivated and touched this audience in an incredible way. And we're fortunate to have interviewed the creators of that shop, Michael Scott Cohen, the founder at Harper & Scott. We interviewed him, as well as Kate Howlett, CMO at Harper & Scott, where we talk about different topics, but these are the folks, the geniuses behind this Chick-fil-A shop. I bring this up to you just to show you what's happening in the world at large with merch. And if it's happening in the fast food business, it can happen with the brand that you work with. Also, another phenomenon that we've noticed and have had reported back to us is this phenomenon of the on-site or in-person pop-up shop. And follow the trends in retail, follow the trends that are happening with brands and with fashion, and you'll be close on the heels with some pretty cool stuff. This was the Ed Sheeran pop-up shop they created special merchandise just for, it was an American Express collab, where if you were an American Express customer, you had access to certain types of merch that no one else could get. So it's an amazing experience. The other thing we're seeing happen, and I just want to throw this in because I thought it was phenomenal, is around inclusivity, size inclusivity, and things that are happening with inclusivity in merch. Formula One, Formula One is massive. We think of soccer or football, we think of NBA, we think of all these big sports, but racing has been incredibly popular. There's over 1.6 billion Formula One fans. They released a merch collection, and what they are doing, Formula One brands are doing with merch, is incredible. I encourage you to follow them, check them out. But this particular collection they dropped with size inclusive, notice no upcharge for XL and XXL sizes, very gender and age inclusive models. It was a really cool experience. It had over 500,000 likes and over 1,000 comments. So it's a really cool merch experience going on with racing. Some of the best pros in the business follow trends that are happening in some of the hottest markets. Now, they may work for an insurance company, but they're following trends that are happening right at the cusp of the consumer market, because that's their buyer. That's who they're selling to. And remember, they want to create that experience for that brand, for that community. Now, back to Aldi's. Aldi's, the discount grocery store that launched this campaign that got all kinds of buzz. It's so popular that customers were having a hard time finding it. One thing that they did was that they released everything under $10. I don't know who thought of this, but this was a brilliant brand experience, because if you are a discount grocery chain, You can't launch an incredible brand experience and sell a $700 hoodie or even a $150 hoodie or a $100 hoodie. You can't do that. Instead, what they did was they created this experience and said, you know what, we're going to sell everything under $10. Now, here's the pro tip. The pro tip is, how did they do that? You cannot buy a tracksuit and get it that cheap to market. Maybe you could. They either subsidized part of the cost or almost all of the cost in order to do that, because somebody in the brand experience team, somebody in communications and marketing, somebody in brand said, you know what, this is so vital to our company. This is so vital to us. It's a press release. It's an emotional connection. It's a way we can connect with our biggest fans. We're going to subsidize the cost of it. It's a really good tip for you as you talk with brands and you're creating merch experiences for them, because they too can invest in their merch experiences as well. We wrote about this in the backpack, again, in the newsletter. You can check it out there. But what a great idea. What a great concept. Also, I could not have a presentation like this without mentioning the incredible Barbie experience. We could have spent this whole presentation on what's going on with Barbie merch, but we won't. Instead, what we did, we created this amazing collection of Barbie themed merchandise, of colors just for you. Sarah, our social media manager, had created this incredible collection through our connected suppliers. So if you're a commonsku customer, what this means is that you can actually go on and check out this collection that's already been curated for you. Go over and you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen where it says add all or copy to a shop. Easily with a couple of clicks, create this into a pop-up shop for your customers just in time for the Barbie premiere and the Barbie phenomenon that's happening right now. One of my favorite stories that we highlighted in the backpack again was the Alamo Theater had created a brand experience through this thermos and lunchbox kit. And what I loved about it is that they're giving this away, but they're also doing a pop-up at their theaters and merchandise that can only be bought at their theaters on site. I thought that was a really great, again, pro tip for you doing merch experiences for your customers, doing these sort of exclusive merchandise experiences only available at or only available during a certain time. All right, let's wrap this up. I hope today I have shared a lot of inspiring ideas with you that will help you go back to your customers and talk about it. But I want to mention a few things. Merch is no longer simply advertising, as you can tell. It's the new press release, creates this cult-like fervor and followers. It's an emotional connection and conversation point. It's the new affordable luxury. It's now leading trends, and it now falls under a much bigger umbrella brand expression. It's the concrete symbol of the abstract experience. I know that's a crazy phrase, but I've had people pointing out that it was quite eye-opening to them that merch is a concrete symbol of the abstract experience. If you're an insurance company and what you sell is not tangible, you can create a merch experience around it that creates a special connection and special moments with it. Now, finally, I also promised in this webinar that we would talk a little bit about the structure of you and your business. Because one thing that's happened is your buyers become more sophisticated in their buying, in their design, and in their tastes. You have to become all that more savvy as a merch pro. Now, selling thoughtless merchandise is really easy. It's really very simple. But making intentional merch making it memorable and collectible is very hard. And that's what people in this business do incredibly well. Our goal at commonsku is to get you from this category. Right now, if you're not on commonsku right now, you're likely spending 70% of your time managing your orders. We want you spending 80% of your time moving the business forward, working with clients, and then also working on your business. Sometimes you spend so much of your time in your business that you can't work on your business and move it forward. There are over 3,500 suppliers in this industry. There are over 1 million products available. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of clients and projects. So there is so much for you to get your mind around. What we want you to do is spend your time on the fun things like what we just walked through, creating amazing merch experiences for you and your customer. Wrapping here, remember, merch is the concrete symbol of the abstract brand experience. A couple of resources I recommend to you. There's a book put out by A24. This belongs in everyone's desk that's in the merch business, because all it is about movie merch and the merch experiences created. It goes way back to Jaws and some of the initial Star Wars merch, but it's a really cool experience. I highly encourage you to have that on your desk in your showroom if you have a showroom. Also, I just think this is fun. There's a magazine by Murakami that talks about the t-shirts I love. Yes, the Japanese fiction author wrote a book about the t-shirts he loves. Again, another fun way to fall in love with this business. Thanks for joining us today, my friends. This webinar has been brought to you by us at commonsku. Check us out at commonsku.com/demo. And don't forget to check out our newsletter, The Backpack. Sorry, I kept talking about it, but I just, that's where all these ideas come from. You can find more, and you can visit at community.commonsku.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.